What if the ancient prophecies fueling today's outrage were never meant to be taken literally in the first place? Think about that for a second. All across the internet, people use thousand-year-old symbols, beasts, warnings, and apocalyptic imagery as proof that their enemies are evil, their side is righteous, and society is heading towards some final showdown. But what if that reading is completely distorted? What if we took poetic, symbolic, deeply contextual literature and turned it into a weapon for modern tribal conflict? Because that is exactly what modern society keeps doing. Ancient apocalyptic writing was not originally written as a running commentary on modern politics. It was not a coded script for internet culture wars, partisan identity battles, or viral outrage cycles in 2026. These texts came out of specific historical moments. They were written for people living under pressure, fear, occupation, instability, and empire. Their symbols often pointed to immediate realities: persecution, corruption, collapsing systems, and powerful rulers who seemed impossible to resist. The original audience saw their world in those images, but modern society often rips those symbols out of that world and force-fits them into ours. We take metaphors rooted in ancient fear and use them to explain modern anxiety. And the moment that happens, interpretation becomes projection. One of the biggest problems is that we have lost the language of apocalypse itself. Today, when people hear the word apocalypse, they think of catastrophe, destruction, chaos, and the end of the world. But historically, apocalypse meant something closer to an unveiling, a revealing, a pulling back of the curtain. That changes everything. Because instead of reading these texts as symbolic attempts to expose corruption, power, fear, and moral compromise, many people now read them as literal battle plans for their own era. And once translation enters the picture, things get even more distorted. Dead languages carry layers of meaning. Ancient idioms do not map neatly onto modern speech. Symbolic traditions can collapse when translated too literally. Nuance disappears. Poetry gets flattened. Warning becomes ideology. And that is where misunderstanding becomes dangerous. Modern tribalism loves prophecy for a very simple reason. Prophecy gives people something emotionally irresistible: a villain, a mission, and a sense of cosmic importance. If you can convince yourself that your opponents are not just wrong, but prophetically evil, then you no longer have to understand them. You only have to defeat them. That mindset is everywhere now. Ancient beasts become labels for political rivals. Symbolic warnings become excuses to dehumanize the other side. Every major crisis becomes proof that history is entering its final chapter. And social media makes this even worse. Platforms reward urgency. They reward certainty. They reward outrage. They reward fear. The more dramatic the interpretation, the more attention it gets. The more apocalyptic the message sounds, the more shareable it becomes. So people stay trapped in a constant state of moral emergency, convinced they are decoding destiny, when in reality, they may just be feeding an algorithm. Now add modern anxiety to the mix: climate fear, AI ethics, economic pressure, distrust in institutions, social fragmentation. These are real concerns, but instead of confronting them directly, many people force them backward into ancient prophetic frameworks. They read today into yesterday, and that creates a dangerous illusion. The illusion that our current grudges are divinely validated. The illusion that our hostility is sacred. The illusion that conflict is not only inevitable, but righteous. But literalism, in many cases, is not actually ancient. It is often a modern shortcut. It allows people to bypass the harder moral work these texts demand: humility, self-examination, restraint, wisdom, and courage. Because it's much easier to find an enemy in prophecy than to find yourself in it. Maybe that's the real point we keep missing. Maybe the value of ancient prophecy is not that it tells us who to hate. Maybe its value is that it reveals what fear does to human beings, how power manipulates us, how symbols can either wake us up or divide us, how every generation is tempted to turn spiritual language into social weaponry. If we want less conflict in the present, then we need more honesty about the past. That means reading ancestral texts with context, not convenience, with humility, not hysteria, with reflection, not rage. Because the moment we stop using ancient wisdom as a weapon against the other, we may finally recover what it was trying to teach us all along.